Welcome to Calm Cloud Chronicles, where imagination drifts and stories unfold. Sit back, relax, and let the journey begin. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more soothing tales. The Whisper in the Rain. The rain was relentless, an unyielding curtain of silver threads that draped the city in perpetual gloom. Isaac Gray stood at his office window, the glass fogged from the warmth of his breath against the chill outside. The neon lights of the street below flickered, reflected in countless puddles that turned the asphalt into a fractured mirror. In the distance, the wail of a siren was muffled by the rhythmic drumming of rain. On his desk lay the soaked envelope, its edges warped but the ink inside impossibly intact. The paper smelled of damp earth and something else, something metallic, almost alive. Isaac picked it up, turning it over in his hands like an artifact from a time he couldn't quite place. Where the shadow falls, the truth hides. Follow the stream to the heart of the city. He read the note again, his lips moving soundlessly over the words. A riddle, cryptic and infuriating, yet it pulled at something deep within him. It wasn't just the words. It was the way the rain seemed to echo them, as if the city itself was whispering secrets he wasn't meant to hear. Isaac crushed the cigarette in the ashtray, grabbed his coat, and stepped out into the storm. The cold rain hit him like a slap, soaking him to the bone within moments, but he didn't care. His mind churned with questions as he walked, the note crumpled in his pocket like a talisman. The first note had come a week ago, and with it, the first body. Found in an alley not far from here, no witnesses, no suspects, only the rain-slicked pavement and a sense of wrongness that clung to the air. Each crime scene was the same, a note left behind, untouched by the rain, and a victim whose secrets had died with them. But tonight, the rain was different. It wasn't just falling, it was guiding, urging him forward. He followed the flow of water as it snaked down the streets, pooling in gutters and cascading into the labyrinthine sewers beneath. The city's veins pulsed with rainwater, and somewhere beneath the surface, Isaac knew the truth waited. He found the entrance in a forgotten corner of the district, a rusted grate partially obscured by overgrown ivy. The rain seemed to gather there, pooling at his feet before disappearing into the darkness below. With a heave, Isaac pulled the grate aside and descended into the cold, wet gloom. The air was thick and damp, carrying the faint sound of water dripping onto stone. Isaac's flashlight flickered to life, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. Symbols were etched into the stone, their lines faintly glowing as though the rain had awakened them. He ran his fingers over one, feeling its texture, a language he couldn't read, yet somehow understood. Deeper he went, the whispers growing louder. They weren't voices, exactly, but a presence, a feeling, carried on the echo of each drop of water. The walls around him seemed to close in, the space narrowing until he emerged into a cavernous chamber. An underground reservoir stretched before him, its surface eerily still despite the rainwater pouring in from above. Isaac froze. In the stillness, he saw it, a figure cloaked in shadow standing on the far side of the chamber. They turned slowly, their face hidden, yet the whispers seemed to pour from them, carried on the ripples of the water. The rain fell harder now, even underground, as if the storm above had followed him. And then, in a voice that was both a whisper and a roar, the figure spoke. Isaac! Isaac's breath caught in his chest, the sound swallowed by the cavernous space. The figure across the reservoir remained motionless, their presence more shadow than substance, as if the rain itself had taken form. Who are you? Isaac called, his voice trembling but steady enough to carry. The echoes bounced off the damp stone walls, blending with the whispers that filled the air. The figure didn't respond. Instead, they raised a hand slowly, pointing to the reservoir's dark, still waters. The surface rippled, not from the rain but from something beneath. A pulse, rhythmic and deliberate, sent concentric waves radiating outward. Isaac's flashlight beam followed the ripples, but the water was too dark, too deep to reveal what lay below. The truth, the figure said, their voice a haunting harmony of tones, as if several voices spoke at once. It has been waiting, and so have I. Isaac took a cautious step forward, his boots splashing in the shallow puddles near the edge of the reservoir. His heart pounded as he fought the urge to turn and run. Waiting for what? For me? What's this all about? The figure tilted their head, a gesture that felt too deliberate to be human. You've followed the whispers. You've seen the signs. Tell me, Isaac Gray, have you not felt the storm inside you? Isaac froze. The words clawed at something buried deep within him, a memory he'd tried to drown in years of alcohol and solitude. The storm, the night he'd lost her. The rain had washed away the blood, but not the pain. Never the pain. Don't play games with me, Isaac growled, his grip tightening on the flashlight. If you know something, spill it. Why the notes? Why the bodies? Why me? The figure stepped closer, though the distance between them never seemed to change. The whispers grew louder, circling Isaac like an invisible tide. Because you are the key, Isaac. You've always been the key. Before Isaac could respond, the reservoir erupted. Water shot into the air, carrying with it a cascade of glowing symbols that illuminated the chamber. Isaac shielded his eyes, the light burning too bright, too fast. The figure vanished, their form dissipating like mist in the storm. When Isaac opened his eyes, the chamber had changed. The reservoir was no longer water. It was glass, a smooth surface that reflected his image back at him. But it wasn't his own face he saw. It was hers. Elena, he whispered. Her reflection stared back at him, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear, or perhaps a warning. And then she spoke, though her lips did not move. They're coming, Isaac. The whispers surged again, a cacophony of voices that rose like the tide. Isaac spun around, his flashlight cutting through the darkness, but there was no one there. The chamber seemed to close in, the walls shifting like a living maze. And then, from the shadows, he heard the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and drawing closer. Isaac clenched the flashlight, its beam trembling as his grip tightened. The footsteps drew closer, the rhythm deliberate, yet uneven, like the gait of someone long accustomed to the shadows. Then, emerging from the darkness, he saw him. Or perhaps it. A figure wrapped in a tattered, rain-slicked coat, its edges dripping not with water but with ink-black rivulets that seeped into the ground. The figure's face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, and beneath it, where eyes should have been, glowed faint, shifting lights, like reflections of distant lightning in storm clouds. "I've waited a long time for you, Detective Gray," the figure said, the words rasping as if dragged from the depths of a drowned place. Isaac took a step back, his boots scraping against the stone floor. "Who are you? And why the hell are you following me?" He demanded, though his voice betrayed a hint of unease. The figure tilted its head, the movement slow and mechanical. "I am the keeper of the storm's memory," it said. "Every drop of rain that falls carries a fragment of what has been forgotten. Every shadow hides a story yet untold. And you, Isaac Gray, are one of those stories." Isaac's pulse quickened, a cold sweat mingling with the rainwater that dripped from his hair. "I don't have time for riddles," he said, though the weight in his chest told him otherwise. "What do you want from me?" The keeper's lights flickered as it took a step forward, the ink pooling beneath it like spilled secrets. "The rain chose you," it said simply. "It remembers her. It remembers what you lost."
Elena.
Her name cut through him like a blade, the memory of her smile, her laughter, and the rain on that fateful night. He shook his head, trying to dispel the image. "You're wrong," he said. "That storm, it wasn't my fault. I couldn't stop what happened." The keeper paused, as if weighing the truth in his words. "The storm was not blame, Detective Gray. It was a witness. And now, it calls on you to uncover what was hidden that night." Isaac's jaw tightened. What was hidden? Hidden by who? The keeper's shifting eyes seemed to dim for a moment, its voice softening to a whisper. "By those who fear the truth. By those who have silenced the rain's memory for too long. Beneath the city there lies rot. And you, Isaac, are the only one who can listen." The whispers in the chamber grew louder, swirling around Isaac like a gale. Images flitted through his mind. An underground network, men in suits and masks, a glimmer of something ancient, buried and forgotten. And through it all, the sound of rain, relentless and guiding. "Why me?" Isaac asked, his voice barely audible over the storm in his head. The keeper stepped closer, its form towering over him. "Because the rain never forgets. And neither do you." Isaac looked into the glowing storm of the keeper's eyes, his own reflection fragmented within them. He could feel the pull of the rain, the weight of its memory, as if it were alive inside him. Whatever truth lay beneath the city, He knew he couldn't walk away. Not this time. "All right," he said, the words falling like stones. "Show me what I need to see." The keeper extended a hand, its surface like liquid shadow, and gestured toward the reservoir. The glassy surface began to shift, revealing not water but a swirling vortex of images and light. Isaac stepped closer, the whispers growing louder, and peered into the depths. What he saw would change everything. The reservoir's swirling vortex of light twisted and shimmered as Isaac peered into its depths. It felt alive, pulsating with memories that weren't his own but somehow pulled at the corners of his mind. The chamber around him faded away, swallowed by the storm of images now filling his vision. The first image appeared, fleeting, ghost-like, yet vivid enough to feel real. It was the city, but not as Isaac had ever seen it. The streets were cobblestones slick with rain, gas lamps flickered in the mist, and figures hurried through the shadows in cloaks and top hats. The scene felt centuries old, and yet he could smell the damp air, hear the chatter of voices in languages long dead. As the image blurred, another took its place. Isaac saw the underground network, a sprawling labyrinth of tunnels, chambers, and reservoirs stretching beneath the city. Men worked feverishly, carving symbols into the stone walls, the same glowing markings Isaac had seen. Their faces were shrouded, and their tools hummed with a strange energy, as if guided by forces beyond their comprehension. Then came the faces. Isaac flinched as they appeared, one after another, so close he felt he could reach out and touch them. They were victims, people who had been erased, their stories wiped clean like ink washed away in the rain. Yet here they were, preserved in the storm's memory, their eyes pleading silently for recognition. Elena's face emerged last. Isaac's heart stopped as he saw her, not as a memory, but as though she were truly there. Her eyes locked on his, and this time her lips moved. She mouthed a single word. Truth. The vortex swelled, the images overlapping, the whispers transforming into a roar. Isaac stumbled back, overwhelmed by the weight of what he'd seen. But it wasn't over. The glassy surface of the reservoir began to crack, fissures spreading outward like veins. A shadow clawed its way up from the depths, larger and darker than anything Isaac had ever known. It rose slowly, towering above him, its form ever shifting, a storm made flesh. Its voice filled the chamber, deafening yet clear. The storm remembers. The truth cannot be silenced. Isaac's legs buckled, his body refusing to obey the instinct to flee. He knew that this shadow, the storm itself, held answers he needed, but at a price he wasn't sure he could afford. What is the truth? He asked, his voice shaking but firm. The storm leaned closer, its form enveloping him in shadow and rain. It is buried in lies, hidden beneath the city you walk. But you must choose Isaac Gray. Will you uncover it, or will you drown in it? The air in the chamber felt heavier now, charged with a tension that pressed down on Isaac like the weight of the ocean above. He didn't trust the storm, whatever it was, but he knew the answers he sought were somewhere beneath the surface of its cryptic warnings. The rain had brought him this far, and he couldn't turn back now. Isaac squared his shoulders and steadied his voice. masking the storm of emotions churning within. If I'm going to find the truth, I need to know where to start. The towering shadow loomed closer, its form rippling like clouds caught in an endless tempest. The truth begins where the rain cannot reach, it rumbled. The words carried an ominous finality, yet they stirred a memory deep within Isaac. Where the rain cannot reach, Isaac muttered, the words resonating with the notes he had followed. His thoughts darted back to one of the victims, a reporter who had been investigating corruption beneath the city. Her murder had been ruled an accident, but Isaac never bought the official story. She had mentioned, in the fragments of her notes recovered from her apartment, rumors of a hidden council, a secretive group that controlled the city from the shadows, their machinations buried deep, both figuratively and literally. Isaac met the storm's unrelenting gaze, or where its eyes might have been had it possessed them. The old reservoirs, he said, the realization clicking into place. There's more beneath the city, isn't there? Places even the rain doesn't touch. The storm recoiled slightly, its shadow swaying as though affirming his deduction. Beneath the reservoirs lies the cradle of their lies, it said. A hollow heart that beats with their greed and their fear. You will find their secrets there. Isaac turned, his flashlight beam cutting through the damp air as he scanned the cavern. The reservoir's edges were steep and craggy, but to one side, he saw an ancient stone staircase descending into the depths. The steps were slick with moss, their edges worn smooth by time. His gut tightened at the thought of what might lie below, but he pushed the fear aside. He'd come too far to stop now. As he approached the staircase, the storm's voice echoed one final warning, reverberating through the chamber like distant thunder. The rain remembers, Isaac Gray, but the truth it carries is heavy. Do not let it drown you. Isaac didn't respond. He descended the steps slowly, each footfall taking him farther from the world above and deeper into the unknown. The air grew colder, the sound of rain fading until only his breaths and the echo of his steps remained. The walls were lined with more of the glowing symbols, their light pulsing faintly, as if in rhythm with a heartbeat he couldn't hear. The staircase ended at a massive iron door, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to move and shift in the flickering light of his flashlight. At its center was a keyhole, shaped like no key Isaac had ever seen. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the crumpled note he had taken from the first victim. The ink glowed faintly, brighter now than it had before. A thought struck him. Could the note itself be the key? He pressed the paper to the keyhole. The iron groaned, the symbols across its surface flaring with light before fading to darkness. The door creaked open, revealing a vast chamber lit by a sickly, flickering light. Machinery hummed in the distance, and the air was thick with the metallic tang of something ancient and alive. Isaac stepped inside, his jaw tightening as he took in the sight before him. Rows of desks lined the room, each occupied by shadowed figures, their faces obscured by dark hoods. At the center of the chamber stood a dais, and atop it, a machine unlike anything Isaac had ever seen. A web of gears, wires, and glowing crystals that pulsed like a beating heart. The figures turned toward him as one, the movement unervingly synchronized. A low murmur spread through the room, the sound chillingly reminiscent of the whispers that had guided Isaac here. "You shouldn't have come," one of the figures said, their voice sharp and cold. Isaac's flashlight trembled slightly as he gripped it tighter, his voice steady despite the storm of fear rising within him. "I didn't come this far to turn back now." The storm's warning echoed in his mind. Do not let it drown you. Isaac stepped forward, the beam of his flashlight cutting across the chamber. The hooded figures turned to face him fully, their movements eerily synchronized, as though they were extensions of a single will. The low murmur that had filled the room grew louder, pressing against Isaac's eardrums like a rising tide. He let out a steadying breath. I'm only going to ask this once, he said, his voice slicing through the oppressive hum. What is this place? And why are you leaving bodies and notes for me to find? One of the figures stepped forward, their robe glinting faintly in the sickly light from the machine on the dais. The hood cast their face into shadow, but Isaac could feel their gaze, a piercing, icy weight that seemed to see straight through him. This is not your fight, Detective Gray, the figure said, their tone as cold and hollow as the wind through a cavern. Walk away while you still can. Isaac barked a sharp laugh, though there was no humor in it. Walk away? After you've dragged me through half the city, chasing your cryptic messages and the bodies you've left behind? Not a chance. He took another step closer, feeling the pressure in the room mount. Now tell me, he demanded, who are you, and what is that thing? He pointed the flashlight at the pulsating machine on the dais. The glow from its crystalline core seemed to intensify, as if reacting to his presence. The hooded figure tilted their heads slightly, a motion that carried an unsettling calm. We are the scribes of the forgotten, they said. Keepers of the city's buried truths. For centuries, we have ensured that those truths remain hidden, for the good of all who dwell above. Isaac narrowed his eyes, his instincts prickling at the edges of his mind. Hidden? You mean covered up, buried under lies and bodies. He gestured around the room. And this machine? What's it doing? What are you so afraid of people finding out? The figure remained still for a moment, then raised a hand. The murmur from the other figures ceased, the chamber falling into an unnatural silence broken only by the hum of the machine. You misunderstand, Detective, they said. The machine is not meant to conceal the truth. It is meant to contain it. The words sent a chill down Isaac's spine. Contain it? He repeated. What the hell does that mean? The figure stepped aside, motioning toward the glowing machine. The storm, they said simply. It is not just rain. It is not just memory. It is a force, ancient, relentless, and powerful. Without the machine to hold it in check, it would consume the city, drowning its streets in the weight of every secret, every forgotten sin. Isaac's grip tightened on the flashlight as he processed the revelation. You're telling me the storm is alive? It is more than alive, the figure said, their voice tinged with something that might have been reverence or fear. It is the storm that binds us, the storm that remembers. And you, Detective Gray, have stirred it. Isaac's mind raced. The rain, the whispers, the notes, they weren't just guiding him. They were calling him, drawing him deeper into a conspiracy that ran as deep as the city itself. But he couldn't tell if he was being led to answers or to a trap. He straightened, meeting the figure's hidden gaze with a defiance he barely felt. You don't get to decide what the city knows or doesn't know, he said. You don't get to play God. The other figures began to rise from their desks, their movements eerily fluid. The murmurs returned, louder and more menacing. The figure who had spoken to Isaac stepped closer, their presence looming. "The storm chose you, detective," they said, their voice now a low growl. "But if you will not heed its warnings, then you will face its wrath." The chamber trembled, the hum of the machine growing louder. The glowing core pulsed wildly, and the air filled with the scent of ozone. Isaac's instincts screamed at him to run, but he planted his feet, refusing to back down. "Then let's see what the storm remembers," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Isaac's heart pounded like a war drum, but his resolve was iron. The storm's fury crackled in the air, the glowing machine thrumming like it could burst apart at any moment. The chamber seemed alive, its walls shifting under the weight of whatever dark power had been suppressed here for generations. He took a measured breath, steadying his thoughts. If these people, scribes of the forgotten, claimed to contain the storm, then the machine was the linchpin holding everything together. But Isaac wasn't sure if dismantling it would uncover the truth or doom the city to chaos. He scanned the room, his instincts honing in on every movement. The hooded figures were closing in, their murmurs rising to a haunting crescendo. His fingers tightened around the flashlight. It wasn't much, but he'd gotten out of tighter spots with less. "I don't know what game you think you're playing," Isaac said, his voice cutting through the rising din. "But if you think I'm just going to back off, you've got another thing coming." The hooded figure who'd spoken earlier stepped forward, their shadow stretching unnaturally long across the floor. "You do not understand what you are tampering with," they hissed. "The truth is not yours to take. It will destroy you as it has destroyed so many before you." Isaac smirked, though the tension in his jaw betrayed the confidence he was trying to project. "Sounds to me like you're more afraid of what happens if I let the truth out." With that, he made his move. In one swift motion, he swung the flashlight toward the nearest figure, its beam momentarily blinding them. They recoiled, the murmurs faltering as Isaac darted toward the dais. His eyes locked on the machine's glowing core, its crystalline structure pulsating like a living heart. The murmurs turned to shouts as the figures rushed to intercept him, their movements eerily in sync. Isaac leapt onto the dais, narrowly avoiding a grasping hand. The air around the machine was electrified, making the hairs on his arms stand on end. He could feel its power, a force both ancient and primal, radiating from its core. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the nearest control panel. Was he really about to do this? The Keeper's warning echoed in his mind, "Do not let it drown you." But then he remembered Elena's face in the reservoir, her silent plea. The truth, she had said. Isaac's jaw clenched. Whatever lay ahead, he wasn't going to let fear stop him. Before the hooded figures could pull him back, Isaac slammed his hand onto the panel, pressing the largest button he could find. The machine groaned, its hum rising to a deafening pitch. The glowing core flared, filling the chamber with blinding light. The hooded figures recoiled, their cries drowned out by the machine's escalating roar. The storm erupted. The chamber shook violently, cracks spidering across the walls as water poured in from unseen cracks above. The light from the machine fractured, scattering into a kaleidoscope of images that danced across the room. Isaac shielded his eyes, bracing himself as the storm's power surged around him. And then, everything went still. When Isaac opened his eyes, the chamber was transformed. The hooded figures were gone, their robes scattered on the floor as if they had evaporated into the air. The machine lay dormant, its core dark and lifeless. The only sound was the steady drip of water from the broken ceiling. Isaac stumbled to his feet, his body aching from the storm's backlash. He looked around, his heart sinking as he realized he was alone. But then he saw it, an opening in the far wall, newly revealed by the storm's destruction. Faint light spilled through the crack, illuminating a path that led deeper into the earth. The whispers returned, faint but insistent, guiding him forward. Isaac took one last look at the ruined chamber before stepping through the opening. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he was closer to the truth than he had ever been. Isaac pushed through the jagged opening in the wall, the faint light beyond beckoning him forward. The air grew colder as he stepped into the new passageway, his boots crunching over the debris from the storm's destruction. Water dripped steadily from the cracks above, forming shallow pools that mirrored the faint glow ahead. The corridor was narrow, the walls lined with strange, intricate carvings, symbols that seemed to pulse faintly, as though alive. Isaac ran his fingers over one of the markings, the grooves cold and damp under his touch. It was similar to what he had seen in the earlier chambers, but these were more detailed, more deliberate. They felt like a language, one he still couldn't decipher but instinctively understood as ancient. The passage widened as he moved forward, opening into a vast, circular chamber that took his breath away. The ceiling arched high above, vanishing into darkness, while the floor was dominated by a massive pool of water. At its center stood a monolithic structure, a pillar of stone, etched with more glowing symbols that spiraled upward like a staircase of light. The entire space resonated with a low hum, the sound reverberating through Isaac's chest like the pulse of a living being. He stepped cautiously to the edge of the pool, his flashlight casting long shadows across the surface. The water was unnaturally still, its surface reflecting the pillar with perfect clarity. And yet, when he looked closer, he could see things moving beneath, shapes that twisted and writhed just out of focus, like shadows trapped beneath the glassy surface. Isaac swallowed hard, his instincts screaming at him to tread carefully. He scanned the room, looking for clues. The edges of the chamber were lined with alcoves, each holding statues of cloaked figures resembling the scribes he had confronted earlier. Their faces were blank, but their hands were outstretched, each pointing toward the pillar in the center. The whispers returned, louder now, their voices clearer but still incomprehensible. They swirled around Isaac, tugging at his thoughts, his memories, as though urging him to act. And then he saw it, an object resting at the base of the pillar, partially submerged in the water. It glinted faintly in the light, a metallic sheen that drew his eye. Without thinking, he stepped into the pool. The water was icy, seeping through his boots and sending a jolt up his spine. The sensation wasn't just cold. It was heavy, as though the water itself pressed against him, resisting his every step. As he reached the object, he crouched and lifted it carefully from the water. It was a key, ancient and ornate, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols that adorned the pillar. The moment his fingers closed around it, the whispers stopped. The chamber went deathly silent, save for the distant drip of water. Isaac turned the key over in his hands, its weight far heavier than it should have been. He knew without a doubt that this was what the storm had led him to. But what it unlocked, he didn't yet know. The hum in the chamber grew louder, the pillar's symbols glowing brighter. Isaac stepped back instinctively, the key still clutched tightly in his hand. The carvings on the pillar began to shift, their lines rearranging themselves into a pattern that formed an image, a map. Isaac's breath hitched as he recognized the outline of the city above, but it was overlaid with another network, an intricate web of tunnels, chambers, and structures that stretched far beyond what he had ever seen. At the heart of the map was a glowing mark, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. He stared at the map, realization dawning. The mark wasn't just a location. It was the storm's source, the place where the secrets of the city and its buried truths converged. And now, with the key in hand, Isaac knew he had no choice but to find it. But as the light from the pillar dimmed, the water at his feet began to ripple. The shapes beneath the surface grew clearer, rising slowly toward him. The whispers returned, louder and more urgent, as though warning him of what was coming. Isaac tightened his grip on the key, his jaw set. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it. The storm had led him this far, and he wasn't about to turn back now. Isaac emerged from the chamber, the weight of the ancient key heavy in his hand and heavier still in his mind. The glowing map from the pillar was burned into his memory, its intricate web of tunnels etched vividly. The pulsing mark at its heart, both a destination and a warning, drew him forward like a gravitational pull. Whatever truth awaited him, it was clear the city's buried secrets weren't just metaphors. They were alive, powerful, and deadly. The whispers seemed to sense his resolve. They quieted as he climbed through the crumbled corridors, their presence now more of a watchful silence, as if the storm itself were holding its breath. Water dripped from the ceiling in steady rhythms, echoing through the tunnels as Isaac navigated deeper underground. He marked each turn, each passage, following the map that had imprinted itself on his thoughts. It wasn't long before the tunnels began to change. The rough, weathered stone gave way to smooth walls lined with strange machinery, gears, pipes, and conduits that pulsed faintly with light. The technology was unlike anything Isaac had ever seen, its design a blend of the ancient and the futuristic. The hum of the storm's memory grew louder, vibrating through his boots as he stepped cautiously forward. He came to a junction where the tunnels split into 3 paths. At the center of the crossroads stood another statue, a cloaked figure like those in the chamber above, but this one was larger, more imposing. Its hands were outstretched, holding an inscription carved into a metallic tablet. Isaac stepped closer, shining his flashlight over the words. The heart of the storm remembers all. To open its gates, the key must awaken what has been forgotten. Beneath the inscription were 3 slots carved into the tablet, each outlined with glowing lines that pulsed faintly. Isaac's hand instinctively tightened around the key. He studied the paths ahead, noting symbols etched above each entrance: a sun, a crescent moon, and a storm cloud. The whispers rose again, faint but insistent, urging him toward the storm cloud path. The air grew colder as Isaac entered the tunnel, the faint hum of machinery now a deep, resonant thrum that seemed to echo his heartbeat. The walls shimmered with condensation, the droplets catching the faint glow of the machinery embedded within. The tunnel sloped downward, spiraling deeper into the earth. With each step, Isaac felt the weight of the storm pressing down on him, a presence that was both a guide and a looming threat. The passage ended abruptly at another chamber, smaller than the last but no less extraordinary. In its center was a pedestal, upon which sat an object that pulsed faintly with light, a crystalline sphere encased in twisting metal tendrils. The air around it shimmered, as though the storm itself had been captured within. Isaac approached cautiously, the whispers growing louder with each step. He could feel the storm's power radiating from the sphere, its energy crackling faintly against his skin. The key in his hand seemed to respond, its glowing symbols flaring brighter as he drew closer. The sphere wasn't just a piece of the storm. It was a fragment of its memory, a piece of the truth Isaac had been chasing. Placing the key into the slot at the sphere's base, Isaac turned it slowly. The chamber trembled, the hum rising into a deafening roar as the sphere came to life. Light burst from its core, filling the room with cascading images, memories pulled from the storm's depths. The visions overwhelmed him. He saw the city as it had once been, a place of hope, of innovation, built on promises of prosperity. But those promises had been betrayed, its people sacrificed to maintain the power of a select few. He saw the origins of the storm, a force unleashed by greed and hubris, a fragment of the city's soul bound to the rains that now washed its streets. And then he saw her, Elena, standing at the heart of it all, her face etched with sorrow and defiance. She held another key, identical to the one Isaac now carried, and in her eyes, he saw the weight of the truth she had uncovered. The light faded, the images dissolving into the whispers that filled the chamber. Isaac staggered back, his mind racing as he pieced together what he had seen. The storm wasn't just a force of nature. It was a reckoning, a manifestation of the city's forgotten sins. And Elena, she hadn't been a victim of circumstance. She had been part of something much larger, something she had tried to stop. Isaac clenched his fists, determination hardening his resolve. The map, the key, and the storm's memory had led him this far. Now, it was up to him to finish what Elena had started. He turned back toward the passage, the whispers now a steady chorus of guidance. The source of the storm, and the truth he had chased for so long, lay just ahead. Elena's face lingered in Isaac's mind, vivid and haunting. The storm's visions had shown her as more than just a memory. She was a pivotal piece of the truth he sought. As he climbed through the tunnels, his mind raced, stitching together fragments of what he'd seen and what he remembered. She had been different from anyone Isaac had ever known. A journalist by trade, but a seeker of justice at heart, Elena's determination to uncover the city's buried secrets had been unmatched. When they had met, her energy had been infectious, her belief in the power of truth unshakable. Isaac, jaded from years of chasing dead ends and seeing corruption win, had been drawn to her fire like a moth to a flame. But her work had been dangerous, too dangerous. She had been investigating a series of disappearances tied to the city's elite, digging into the shadows of the subterranean world Isaac now found himself in. He had tried to warn her, tried to pull her back, but she had always been one step ahead, one note closer to the truth. The storm's visions filled in the blanks he hadn't been able to see before. Elena's investigation had led her here, to the hidden network beneath the city. She had uncovered the existence of the scribes and their machine, the mechanism meant to contain the storm's memory. But she had seen something else too, something Isaac couldn't yet fully grasp. She had been holding a key in the vision, identical to the one Isaac now carried. It had been her key that triggered the storm's warning, her key that had forced the truths of the past to rise like waves in a flood. But why? Had she intended to destroy the machine and release the storm, or had she uncovered a purpose far greater than that? As Isaac rounded a bend in the tunnels, her voice echoed faintly in his memory. The truth isn't just about justice, Isaac. It's about giving the city back its soul. He stopped in his tracks, the weight of her words crashing over him. The storm wasn't just a force of destruction. It was the city's collective memory, its soul fragmented and buried. Elena had seen the storm not as an enemy, but as a necessary reckoning. She had wanted to free it, to let the rain cleanse the city and force its secrets into the light. But something had gone wrong. The storm's visions hinted at interference, shadowy figures surrounding her, the faint glow of the machine's core as it flared uncontrollably. Had the scribes stopped her? Had they turned her quest for truth into another layer of lies? Isaac's jaw tightened as the pieces came together. Elena hadn't died because of her investigation alone. She had died because she had challenged the very foundation of the city's power, daring to confront the storm's keepers and their centuries of control. She had been silenced, sacrificed to preserve the fragile balance that kept the city's sins hidden. The whispers around him shifted, growing softer, almost mournful. It was as if the storm itself grieved for Elena, remembering her defiance, her courage. Isaac clenched his fists, determination hardening in his chest. He hadn't been able to save her then, but he wouldn't let her memory fade into the rain. Whatever truth she had died for, he would see it through. He pressed forward, the tunnels growing darker and colder as he descended. The storm's source, The pulsing heart he had seen on the map was close now, he could feel it. And as he walked, he could almost hear her voice, guiding him, urging him on. The truth isn't just about justice, Isaac. Her voice echoed softly in his mind. It's about setting us free. Isaac emerged from the darkness of the tunnel into an immense cavern, a space so vast that his flashlight's beam was swallowed whole by the void. The hum that had accompanied him through the depths now thrummed loudly in his chest, resonating with the key he carried. The very air seemed alive, charged with the electricity of anticipation, as if the storm itself was waiting for him to step closer. At the center of the cavern, suspended in the air like a celestial body torn from the heavens, was the storm's heart. It was unlike anything Isaac had imagined, neither machine nor natural formation, but something in between. A massive sphere of churning light and shadow hovered silently above the ground, its surface rippling like liquid mercury. Arcs of energy crackled along its edges, illuminating the cavern walls with brief flashes that revealed intricate, ancient carvings. The entire structure pulsed with a steady rhythm, a heartbeat that seemed to match Isaac's own. The whispers returned, softer now, almost reverent. They swirled around Isaac like a choir, their tones blending into a single, unearthly melody. They weren't warning him anymore, they were beckoning him forward. He stepped cautiously into the cavern, his every movement amplified by the echoing space. The floor beneath his boots was etched with glowing patterns, each line converging toward the storm's heart like veins carrying lifeblood to an organ. As he drew closer, he saw that the sphere was connected to the cavern floor by a series of crystalline conduits, their surfaces thrumming with the same energy that filled the air. Isaac stopped a few paces from the heart, his eyes drawn to the base of the sphere where a pedestal jutted upward from the floor. It was adorned with carvings similar to those he had seen throughout the tunnels, but these were more intricate, more deliberate. At its center was a slot, the perfect size for the key he carried. His grip tightened around the key as he hesitated. The storm's whispers had led him here, but he didn't know what would happen if he unlocked the heart. Would it reveal the truth he had sought, or would it unleash the full fury of the storm, tearing apart the fragile balance of the city above? Images of Elena flashed in his mind, her face, her strength, her defiance. She had stood here once, just as he was now, her key in hand. She had made a choice, but the storm's memory hadn't shown him what that choice had been. He could still hear her voice, faint and distant, urging him forward. The truth isn't just about justice, Isaac. It's about setting us free. He exhaled slowly, his decision made. Whatever lay beyond this moment, he had to see it through, for her, for himself, for the city that had forgotten its own soul. Isaac stepped to the pedestal and inserted the key into the slot. The cavern reacted immediately, the hum rising into a deafening roar. Light and shadow surged through the conduits, racing toward the sphere. The storm's heart flared, its surface rippling violently as if awakened from a deep slumber. The whispers swelled, no longer a melody but a torrent of voices, each one distinct yet unified. They spoke in a language Isaac couldn't understand, but their meaning was clear. The storm was alive, and it was reaching out. The sphere began to fracture, cracks spreading like lightning across its surface. Each fissure revealed a glimpse of something beyond memories, visions, fragments of the city's past. Isaac saw faces, moments, choices, and consequences, all swirling together in the storm's chaotic embrace. And then the heart shattered. The cavern was flooded with light, a kaleidoscope of color and motion that engulfed Isaac completely. He staggered back, shielding his eyes, but the light was everywhere, penetrating even the darkest corners of his mind. The storm surged through him, its memories pouring into his thoughts, overwhelming him with their weight. He saw the city as it had once been, its people thriving before greed and corruption took root. He saw the creation of the machine, a desperate attempt to contain the storm's power and silence the truths it carried. He saw the scribes, their faces unmasked, their humanity twisted by centuries of control and fear. And he saw Elena. She stood at the storm's heart, her key in hand, her face etched with resolve. She had chosen to release the truth, knowing the cost, knowing it would take her life to set the storm free. Isaac fell to his knees as the visions faded, the light retreating into the fractured remnants of the heart. The cavern was silent now, the whispers gone. But the truth remained, etched into his mind like a scar. The storm had been freed, its memory unleashed. And now it was up to Isaac to decide what to do with it. The storm's awakening was not confined to the cavern where Isaac had stood moments before. It rippled upward, a force unleashed upon the city above. The rain came harder now, relentless and unyielding, drenching streets that glistened under flickering streetlights. It wasn't a normal rain anymore. It carried a weight, a presence, that the people above could feel in their bones. As the storm surged through the city, its memory bled into reality. Forgotten truths and buried secrets surfaced in ways no one could ignore. Crumbling facades of long-abandoned buildings revealed messages etched into their stones, names, dates, and cryptic warnings tied to the city's darkest days. Statues that had stood for centuries began to crumble, revealing hollow cavities stuffed with artifacts from a time when the city's soul hadn't yet been sold to the highest bidder. The people in the streets felt it too, though they didn't fully understand. Whispers echoed down alleys, carried on the wind, slipping into the minds of those who paused to listen. Some were haunted by memories they couldn't possibly own. Others were struck by flashes of insight, as if the storm was speaking directly to them, demanding that they remember what had been erased. The powerful weren't spared. The city's elite, those who had long thrived in shadow, felt the storm's reach in ways they hadn't anticipated. Bank vaults were flooded, not with water but with documents long thought destroyed. Hidden rooms in their towering offices were laid bare, their secrets exposed by rain that seemed to seep through even the most impenetrable barriers. The media buzzed with rumors of corruption unearthed, scandals involving the very figures who had shaped the city's narrative for decades. But it wasn't just the guilty who were caught in the storm's grasp. Ordinary people began to experience strange phenomena. A boy in the slums saw visions of a life his grandfather had lived, of protests silenced and victories stolen. A woman walking home felt the rain warm her skin, whispering the name of a mother she'd never known but now remembered. The storm didn't distinguish between guilt and innocence. It was indiscriminate in its revelations, forcing everyone to confront the ghosts of their shared history. The city's infrastructure suffered as well. The ancient tunnels below groaned and shifted, water bursting through in torrents as if the storm was reclaiming what had been stolen from it. Streets sank into sinkholes that revealed long-buried chambers, their walls lined with carvings and artifacts from a forgotten age. It was as though the storm itself was dismantling the city's foundation, piece by piece. Amid the chaos, people began to gather in the rain, their faces turned upward. Some were frightened, others awestruck. There was a sense of collective reckoning, as if the storm had become a mirror, reflecting not just the city's past, but also the choices its people had made, and the choices still left to make. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the rain softened. The intensity of the storm lessened, though its presence lingered. The whispers subsided, leaving an eerie calm in their wake. The city stood transformed, not destroyed, but irrevocably altered. Isaac emerged from the tunnels into this new world, his clothes soaked through, the key still clutched in his hand. He stood on a hill overlooking the city, watching as the storm's memory seeped into every corner. The truth was out now, undeniable and inescapable. He couldn't help but wonder, what would the city do with its soul returned? Would it rise from the ruins of its lies, or would the storm's reckoning prove to be too much? The answer wasn't clear, not yet. But as Isaac looked down at the city, he knew one thing: Elena had been right. The truth wasn't just about justice. It was about setting them all free. The storm's reckoning reached its crescendo. Isaac stood at the edge of the city's heart, the rain pouring around him as if the storm itself was alive, celebrating its liberation. The streets below shimmered with a strange luminescence, the water reflecting the secrets that had risen from the depths. People gathered in the open, unafraid of the torrent, faces turned to the skies as whispers faded into a chorus that united them all. It was no longer just rain, it was truth falling from the heavens. Above the skyline, the storm pulsed like a living entity. The clouds churned in hues of silver and black, streaked with jagged veins of glowing light. The city's towers, symbols of its unspoken greed, trembled in the wind. But they did not fall. Instead, they stood in defiance, as if daring the storm to push them further. Isaac took a step forward, his boots splashing through the water that covered the cracked asphalt. The key in his hand glimmered faintly, its job complete, yet its presence still heavy. The storm had given him the truth, but what he did with it was his choice now. The remnants of the machine that had held the storm captive lay shattered, scattered across the ruins of the underground. The scribes were gone, their control over the city dissolved as their lies were unmade. But Isaac knew the storm's memory would not simply erase them. It would linger, a reckoning that carried justice in its wake. And then he felt it. The rain wasn't just falling. It was changing. The droplets turned warm, glowing faintly like embers before dispersing. The whispers that had surrounded Isaac for so long quieted entirely, leaving a stillness that was almost disconcerting. The air carried something new now, not fear, not chaos, but hope. The city was still scarred, its sins exposed for all to see. But it was breathing again. The echoes of a single voice, Elena's voice, cut through Isaac's thoughts. You did it, Isaac. The city's soul is free. What happens next? The voice trailed off, her presence fading into the rain. Isaac let out a long breath, lifting his face to the storm. He didn't feel victorious, but he felt lighter. For the first time in years, the weight of his own regrets, his failures, wasn't unbearable. The storm's light began to retreat, the clouds breaking apart to reveal glimpses of the stars above. The rain eased into a gentle drizzle, casting the city in a dreamlike glow. People began to move through the streets, hands reaching out to touch the rain, to feel the truth it carried. Isaac could see them, ordinary citizens finding fragments of memories that were not their own but were part of something larger. Murals appeared on walls, names engraved on stone, glimpses of a forgotten past tied to the rain that fell on them now. Isaac clenched the key one last time before kneeling to place it into the earth, letting it sink beneath the surface. It didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to the city, to its soul that the storm had restored. As the key disappeared into the mud, Isaac stood and turned toward the streets. He had no speech to make, no hero's proclamation. He was just a man who had followed the rain, who had let it guide him to the truth. And now he walked forward, his coat dragging behind him as the city rebuilt itself, not through bricks and mortar, but through memory and hope. The rain fell softer now, quieter. The storm had done its work. And though the city had miles to go, Isaac knew one thing as he disappeared into its renewed glow. The truth had finally come home. Thank you for being a part of Calm Cloud Chronicles. What kind of stories help you relax the most? Please let us know in comments below. If you enjoyed this story, let us know by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Until next time, stay peaceful and keep dreaming.